right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys, we finally did get a physique update from Jon Delarosa, courtesy of his coach, Patrick Torr. Now, this would be at 2 days out from taking the stage at the Tampa Pro. We talked about in the last Tampa Pro preview video how Jon is technically the defending champion from last year's Tampa Pro. He did win this show last year, beating Muhammad Fuda. And even though I think this year's lineup is probably much more tough than last year's, I think this is certainly a very deep lineup. I think Jon looks really good in this update. I'm really impressed by how Jon looks here. And I think one of the things that really impresses me about Jon is he's another bodybuilder that's in his 40s now and is still holding on to a really good version of his physique to where he doesn't seem to be losing much from what he looked like 10 years ago. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with this show, because if I remember correctly from last year, it was that Tampa Pro where Jon beat Mo Fuda. That was kind of a pretty controversial decision. There are a lot of people that thought that Mo should have won that show. And I remember that being one of the more discussed top twos of last year. And so Jon, I feel like based on this update, is still very much in the mix in this lineup, still very much probably one of the front runners here. And like I said, last year at the Olympia, he was 12th, and that's still tying his best ever Olympia placing. So it really doesn't feel like he's losing much from what you would consider to be your prime years in bodybuilding, even though he's over 40. He's still killing it. And it looks like based on this 2 days out update, even though his coach says here he's pretty flat, I think he looks like he's on track to bring a very similar package as what we saw him bring last year at both the Tampa and the Olympia. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Now, next up in the news, a 3 days out update from Quint Beastwood, Quint Naraya. So he posted a video where you can see him pose on YouTube, and he also posted some pictures on Instagram. And starting with the video, you're starting to get to see what he looks like from the back, which I've been saying this whole time is really one of the things that we need to look at the most with Quinton, conditioning and how he looks from the back. And maybe even a combination of the two, because conditioning is really evident from the back, especially with a guy like Quinton. And in the pictures, I think he looks a little bit better than in the video from the back, because in the video, when he's actually posing in motion, you can see where he's still holding some water in his lower body, like where the skin starts to fold. That's where water is being held. And you can see that a little bit more when he's moving in the video. But in the pictures, you know, he's got some pretty deeply striated hamstrings. You can see some striation in the glute, but not a lot. And again, with the back, he's wide from the back because he's got such a nice structure. But in that like mid-lat area, it just seems to lack a little bit of density, even still now. I do think this is probably the best, most improved version of his physique that I think we've seen. And I think from what we've seen from Quinton in the past, this looks to be a very good conditioned version of Quinton. It's just going to be, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be kind of an apples and oranges thing, because Quinton is probably going to be the tallest guy in this lineup. I think he's also probably going to have the best structure in this lineup. There's a lot of guys that are really dense, muscular, shorter guys that have a very different physique than what you see from Quinton. Quinton is probably the most aesthetically pleasing. He's probably going to be the heaviest guy on stage, and in part because of his height, or one of the heavier guys. We talked about Justin Savoy in the last video, who was like 294 at a couple days out, and I talked to him a few days ago, and he said it was because he is 6'3", and that's where a lot of that weight is coming from. But anyway, Quinton's going to be one of the biggest guys in this lineup, probably the most aesthetically pleasing, probably the best structure. Will it come down to conditioning, though, at a show like this? Even though this is a very good conditioned version of Quinton, some of these other guys are extremely peeled, but then they don't have as good of a structure as Quinton. They're not as big as Quinton. And guys like Jordan Hutchinson comes to mind. He doesn't have like the wow factor that Quinton does when it comes to the structure of his physique or how aesthetically pleasing he is. But he does have the wow factor when you look at his updates, and he's just absolutely peeled to the bone, you know, crazy striations everywhere. Glutes are just like shredded. So if you have a matchup like that, who comes out on top? But I will say I'm very impressed by Quinton. He's one of the guys that I'm definitely rooting for here, and I've said it several times already, but probably my favorite physique in this lineup. And he's probably the guy I would like to see win this the most, and probably the guy that I think if he qualifies for the Olympia and really brought it to the Olympia, I think that right now his physique could probably go the furthest at the Olympia if he was peeled to the bone for the O. And speaking of Jordan, he just posted a bunch more pictures today, like 5 hours ago. And this is a prime example of what I'm talking about. I mean, when you talk about condition, look at the side shot here. You can see deep striations in the glutes, even from the side. Vascularity everywhere, serratus obliques. He's not even flexing his pecs here. And you can see where the striations are in his chest. The guy looks insane. And you go to the next picture. This is what I'm talking about with the glutes. Probably the most conditioned from the back, lower body of anybody that we've seen in this lineup. I mean, the glute striations and the hamstrings here are just like out of this world crazy. So when you talk about conditioning, it's definitely different from what you're looking at with Quinton, but I don't think he has the same wow factor. Like, you look at the front double bicep here. He's got a lot of muscle. He's in really good shape. But then you look at a guy like Quinton hit the front double bicep, beautiful structure, beautiful flow, and you don't have that same wow factor with Jordan. But the conditioning is just so nuts. I think crazy conditioning like this and having a lot of muscle will carry you a long way, even if you don't have that extra like umph wow factor like a guy like Quinton has. I'm very impressed with what we're seeing from Jordan. And like I said in previous videos, I think from all the physique updates that we've seen, if we're talking about conditioning, I don't think I've been as impressed with anybody else in this Tampa Pro lineup as the conditioning that we're seeing from Jordan. I mean, he looks just gnarly, absolutely gnarly. And like I said, you may not have the biggest, most recognizable names in this Tampa Pro lineup, but these are some world-class physiques that we're seeing going into this show. I think this is going to be such a highly entertaining, highly competitive lineup where I think you're going to see a lot of these guys that we're not used to talking about as much really bring their all-time best and have a highly, highly competitive show. I was looking at Beef Stew, his story today. He posted another update at 2 days out, a most muscular shot. And he's another guy, like I said, I think he's at his all-time best going into this show. I think the updates that I've seen from Stew are the best that I've seen of him at any point during his career. I think this is the best version of his physique that we've seen. And I think you could say the same for Jordan. I think you could say the same for Quinton. And that's why I'm splitting these Tampa Pro videos into so many different videos, is because there's so many guys in this lineup that all deserve to be discussed here, because I don't think there's a clear front runner, and I just think there's so many guys that are posting really impressive, maybe the best of their career type of updates, and they just don't fit all into one video. So you got to keep making Tampa videos as you keep seeing these really impressive updates from these guys, because really, who is the front runner here? Who are even the top 4 front runners? It's extremely difficult to say. And then even beyond the guys that I'm really impressed with, I mean, I'm excited to see Lionel Beyeke back on stage because it's so few and far between that we actually get to see him compete. And I keep checking his page, his whole page, his stories, his main feed posts are nothing but this. It's just like Bible verses all over his page. Nothing bodybuilding related, physique related, no updates. I have no idea what Lionel Beyeke is going to come into this show looking like. And he's in his mid-40s. He's not getting any younger. We haven't seen him in a while. I'm very curious to see what he looks like here. But if you look at his page, his last bodybuilding post was a video of him training over a year and a half ago. But, I mean, could you see Lionel make a crazy transformation and somehow end up in the first call-out or, like, in the mix for the win? You never know. Anything can happen with bodybuilding. I think that's what makes bodybuilding, that's one of the good aspects of bodybuilding, is you never know what's going to happen. Anything could happen, and so you always have that little bit of excitement to where a guy could come out of nowhere and win this show. A guy that we're barely talking about could win this show. A guy that we haven't talked about in half a decade could come out of nowhere and win. It's unlikely, but it could happen. And I think another element here that's going to make these next 2 weeks in bodybuilding really interesting is next weekend's Texas Pro. And I just saw this video of Andrew Jacked and Behrouz Tabani, 2 guys that I can't wait to see at the Olympia, and hopefully Behrouz is going to be there. I think it's probably a good sign that he's in the UAE training with Andrew. But looking ahead to next weekend's Texas Pro, a show that I know already a lot of these guys doing Tampa that we've been talking about are already confirmed to be doing Texas. Andrew Jacked is typically the guy that wins the Texas Pro. That's typically his Olympia qualifier. But he put out a post on his Instagram saying he's just going to be making an appearance and essentially saying he's not competing. And then I look at this video of him in Behrouz. I think that also confirms that he's not going to be competing. He doesn't look like he's a week out from a show. He did already get the qualification at FIBO. So there's a really high probability that with all these guys that are bringing their best physique, and a lot of them are doing both Tampa and Texas, there's a good chance that with Andrew Jacked not in that Texas Pro, that between these next two shows, you could see two new names added to the Olympia qualified competitor list, and it's probably going to be two guys that we're not typically talking about going into the Olympia. And I suppose you could also have the same guy win both shows, but I'm hoping that we see two different guys win Tampa and then somebody else win Texas, because I think all these guys are really bringing it, and I want to see them get rewarded for it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below based on the last 3 days of videos, all these updates that we've seen for the Tampa Pro. And I'll throw the competitor list back up here one more time. Who do you guys have in your top 6 of this incredible lineup here? I think this is what bodybuilding is all about. It's these type of shows where you don't have that clear front runner and you have a bunch of guys that are kind of on an even playing field and they all look to be bringing it. How do you differentiate a bunch of guys that are kind of on the same level and a bunch of them probably going to be at their best? This is where you're really going to get to see like a true bodybuilding battle where you don't have just one guy dominating or two guys dominating that are way ahead of the pack. I think this is going to be a top 6 or however many guys are in that first call out that everybody is really, really close. But let me know in the comments down below. That's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.